Hey, and welcome back to the video updates for the competitive tier list. I'm just doing this so you can get a little more information on what changes I made and why I made them, as the change notes are rather pithy and I didn't want to write all of what I'm going to say out because that would take a while and bore me and maybe put me to sleep. Alright, the first big change I want to touch on is that I've restructured the way it works a little bit. It used to have a rule that in order to be considered for putting onto this tier list, you have to be either out for C-bills or a hero mech, and what that basically translated to is no mech pack mechs that are like pre-ordered and people have them, so that meant no Clan Invasion 1 until they release for C-bills, no Clan Invasion 2 until they release for C-bills, etc. But I got rid of that rule because there are some leagues that allow those mechs, even some in limited supply, some unlimited. And so basically, figured what the hell, might as well allow them in. They're not going to change rankings anyways because we already have the Direwolf, Timberwolf, and Stormcrow, which are always going to be the most powerful mechs. And so like, we're not going to push any Inner Sphere mechs or old already released mechs down because we're allowing mech pack mechs. So that's the main difference in the competitive tier list. I also updated a few builds and moved some stuff around and added a couple things other than that though, so let's get into it. Change notes. Alright, for long range I had the Hellbringer Prime AB, just the Hellbringer, to tier 1. I was considering putting it at the top of tier 1, but I figured that the strategy of having your Direwolves and Timberwolves stay up and make a really long range firing line would beat the strategy of your Hellbringers hill peeking, because the mounts aren't that high, and I mean even if they were, they just don't have as much firepower. So, and I also added the Warhawk to tier 2. I need to fix that formatting. I'll do it after this is out. Anyways, I added it to tier 2 because this is the 5ER large laser and a big targeting computer. It's not as good as the other clan mechs at the really long range, the ones that are in tier 1, but it is better than anything the Inner Sphere can really offer, especially at the stay up and keep firing no matter what. It's not as good. It's got low mount, so it's not good at hill poking, which is why I put it after the Stalker and Shadowhawk. But it's still pretty brutal at extreme ranges. I also changed the Stalker 3F to a 4N. Struggled with this one a bit. At first I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it because the 3F has extra torso twist range of motion, which is important, but eventually I figured it's not as important at long ranges because you're not like brawling, you don't have to constantly shield and move and get out-rotated by light mechs and stuff like that. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it a 4N or a 3H, because the 3H has better heat generation and range quirks, but it doesn't have any of the cooldown quirks that the 4N gets. Eventually I stuck with the 4N just because the cooldown can help when near the end of the match when like you're just trying desperately to get a kill or they're pushing on you or whatever. That's pretty much it for long range. Medium range, I added the Hellbringer to tier 1. Same exact spot right in front of the Stormcrow, but behind the Direwolf and Timberwolf. It just fits best there. It's a great laser bomb. It's a 6ER Mead large pulse build. And I also added the Trebuchet 7M to tier 3, which is weird. It's the first LRM boat I'm adding to the tier list, at least since the reformatting. But I felt like I had to add it just because it's so goddamn efficient. It's a 50-tonner, but its perks, if you look at them, quirks, whatever, it's got 40% LRM 15 cooldown, which combined with the module and the pilot skill ends up being like 57%, which basically means that you're running 4 LRM 15s in this thing for the tonnage of 2 for a 50-tonner, and that is absurd. You don't get the massive swarm that you get out of like the Awesome, but you also don't get Ghost Heat. So I feel like it's worthy of being in the tier list, which makes me sad because it's a learn boat. But whatever. Alright, and Next up, I just changed the build on the Direwolf because it was still the Gauss Rifle Large Pulse ER Meads build, and I changed it to the UX because that's just performing better at medium range. And short range, I added a bunch of mechs. I added the Mad Dog to tier 1. This is the 6 SRM6 with Artemis build, Brutal Brawler. I added the Warhawk to tier 2. This is the LBX-20 SRM6 and medium pulse laser build. Also a Brutal Brawler, but it's like really fucking weird when it comes to ammo locations, and it's fragile, and so I didn't think it was worth being tier 1. I also added the Atlas S to tier 2, put it ahead of the EDC and the Stalker 5M just because it's so goddamn good at brawling. And I also added the Hellbringer to tier 2. I'm not even sure it should be that high. It might be tier 3, because like the best build I can really figure out for it for brawling is like small pulse lasers and SRMs, but there's only like 2 SRM launchers, and I mean it's really not that devastating of a brawler. It's decent, but I don't know. But I think it does fit in at tier 2. And I also added the Centurion 9AH into tier 3 because yeah, that's where it fits. And finally, onto lights. I moved the Firestarter 9A to the top of tier 1 just because it's so fucking nasty. And I moved up the Hugin in tier 2. I might put it ahead of the Oxide eventually. Those two are really, really close in terms of performance. They have roughly the same DPS. The Oxide has a bit more from the SRM4s, but it doesn't have jump jets and it doesn't have extra machine guns. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Gonna be doing this kind of video for the other 4 tier lists, which I'm also updating all of today. So if you want to check those out, go ahead. But yeah, that's all for this, and thanks for watching.